The boy stood on the corner of a crowded street, his bare feet pressed against the rough pavement, clutching a guitar so worn it seemed like it might fall apart with every strum. Only a few strings remained, stretched thin and out of tune, yet the sound that came from it was carried by something far greater than music. It was carried by his heart. His voice rose above the noise of car horns, footsteps, and hurried conversations, filled with both sorrow and hope. It was the kind of voice that could stop time if only someone cared enough to listen. But no one did. People walked past without a glance, their eyes fixed on their phones, their minds too full of their own troubles to notice the boy pouring out his soul on the street. A few dropped coins into the small tin at his feet without looking up, treating him like part of the background rather than a child with a story to tell. Still, he sang, his voice trembling yet strong, as if he were singing not to be heard, but because he couldn't keep the song inside him. Nearby, a little girl clutched her mother's hand. She stopped in her tracks, tugging gently, her wide eyes fixed on the boy. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the strumming guitar, "why is he singing if nobody listens?" The question lingered in the air, sharp and innocent, as the boy's song carried on, reaching for ears that had yet to open. The man in the gray suit hurried down the sidewalk, his phone buzzing with reminders of yet another meeting. His mind was fixed on deadlines, numbers, and the endless rush of the day, until a sound cut through the city's noise. A fragile melody, carried by a trembling voice, stopped him mid-step. He turned and saw the boy, thin and barefoot, clutching that broken guitar as if it were his lifeline. The music wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was raw. And in that moment, it was the only thing that mattered. The man stood frozen, his chest tightening as the boy sang words about dreams too far to reach, about hunger, about hope that refused to die. For reasons he couldn't explain, it felt like the boy was singing directly to him, stripping away the layers of stress and success he had built around his life. His eyes stung, and before he could look away, he found himself pulling out his phone. Lifting it shakily, he hit record. The lens captured not just the boy's song, but the unspoken truth behind it, a voice that deserved more than a passing glance. Strangers still rushed by without caring, but the man knew this couldn't be ignored. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "The world needs to hear this poor boy sing." In that instant, he had no idea how powerful those words would become. He only knew that he couldn't let the song disappear into the noise of the streets. That night, the man sat alone at his desk, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders. His phone screen glowed in the dark, replaying the video he had captured just hours before. Each time the boy's voice filled the room, he felt the same ache in his chest, the same pull on his heart. With a deep breath, he opened his social media account and typed the words that had been echoing in his mind since he first heard the song, "The world needs to hear this poor boy sing." Then, with a small hesitation, he hit post. At first, nothing happened. Minutes passed quietly, the video drifting into the endless tide of online content. But within the hour, the first notification appeared. Someone had shared it. Then another. And another. Comments began flooding in, "His voice gave me chills, how can someone so young sing with such pain and beauty? This boy needs a chance." By morning, the video had exploded across the internet. News outlets picked it up, celebrities reshared it, and millions of strangers from around the world listened to the boy's voice. People who had never met him felt as though they knew him. His song was no longer echoing into empty streets, it was filling living rooms, cars, and headphones everywhere. The boy who had once been invisible on a busy corner was suddenly the center of attention. The world had finally stopped to listen. And nothing would ever be the same again. The next day, the same street corner that had once ignored the boy was transformed. Cameras crowded the sidewalks, reporters held microphones, and curious strangers gathered with expectant faces. The boy stood frozen, clutching his broken guitar, unsure why so many people suddenly wanted to hear him. His heart raced as he looked at the crowd, his eyes wide with both fear and wonder. Through the sea of people, a woman stepped forward, smiling warmly. She carried a case in her hands and gently knelt before him. With a soft click, she opened it, revealing a brand new guitar, polished and gleaming under the sunlight. The boy's lips parted in disbelief, his trembling hands hovering above the instrument as if it were too precious to touch. "Sing for us," the woman said kindly, her voice full of encouragement. "The world is ready to listen." The boy swallowed hard, his throat tight, but then he nodded. He placed the new guitar against his chest, strummed the strings, and for the first time, a clear, vibrant sound rose into the air. The crowd fell silent, drawn in by the purity of his voice. Some smiled, some wept, but all listened. What had once been just background noise on a busy street had now become the center of the world's attention. And for the boy, standing in that moment, it felt like the universe had finally opened its doors and invited him in. Weeks later, the boy found himself standing on a stage unlike anything he had ever imagined. Bright lights beamed down on him, warming his skin, while the hum of a waiting audience filled the air. He clutched the new guitar close, its polished wood gleaming, and took a deep breath. For a brief second, fear threatened to swallow him whole, but then he remembered the street corner, the nights he sang to no one, and the voice inside that refused to be silenced. The first strum rang out, and the hall fell silent. His voice followed, strong and trembling with emotion, weaving through the room like a prayer. People leaned forward, drawn into the honesty of his song. By the chorus, the crowd was already on their feet, tears glistening in their eyes. His story, once hidden in shadows, was now alive in every note. In the front row, his mother pressed a hand to her mouth, her tears flowing freely as she watched her son finally shine. Pride, love, and relief radiated from her face, proof that all the struggles had led to this moment. When the final note faded, the applause thundered through the hall, echoing like a promise. The boy bowed his head, overwhelmed, his heart soaring higher than the lights above him. Sometimes, it only takes one act of compassion to change the course of a life. And now, the whole world was listening to the song that was never meant to be silenced.